So in order to illustrate this, I'm going to use an example because it's complete. In the other videos, I talked about how to calculate double declining balance, and I also talked about how to calculate straight line. But in this method is switching from one to the other, so it's actually quite a bit easier to show using an example. So what we do here is we have a machine that was purchased for $5,000, so that's the investment amount, and it has a 5-year life with an estimated salvage of $100. Use double declining balance switching to straight line to develop a depreciation schedule for this. So the way that I do that is I start with a table, and in this case the table has every year of the 5-year depreciation schedule. And I have the columns are, the first is the year, the second column is the book value at n-1. So in the first one, this first book value is going to be the book value at time period 0, which is the investment amount. And then I go to double declining balance depreciation, straight line depreciation, and then the one that we're choosing between double declining balance or straight line, and then the book value. So I'm going to go through these calculations. The first thing we need to know is that alpha in this case, because it's a 5-year life, it's 2 over n is 0.4. So I start with the book value of $5,000, and that's book value in time period 0. And then the depreciation using double declining balance, I'm taking it as the initial value minus all depreciation to date, which is 0 because we're in time period 1, times the alpha value. So in this case, it's 5,000 times 0.4, or 2,000. And then for the depreciation using straight line, it's going to be, the straight line equation is I minus S over N. So we have an initial value of 5,000 minus the salvage value over the 5-year life is 980. And what we do in order to choose which depreciation method we use is we take the maximum of the two. So the depreciation of a straight line is 2,000, and double declining balance is 2,000, straight line is 980, so we choose the 2,000 because it's greater. And then what we do is calculate the book value, which is going to be 5,000 minus the depreciation we're going to use is the book value. We take that value then and we bring it down to the beginning value for time period 2. So the book value in time period 1 is equal to, the end of time period 1 is equal to the book value at the beginning of time period 2. Now we go ahead and do this calculation again. So for double declining balance, we take the remaining book value, 3,000 times 0.4 is 1,200. For straight line, we take the remaining book value, which is 3,000, minus the salvage value over 4 years, because there's only 4 years remaining in the life. And again, we choose the bigger one, so we're going to use 1,200. And then we get a book value of 3,000 minus 1,200 is 1,800. So we bring it down to the beginning of the 3rd year, and we do the calculation again, which is 1,800 times 0.4. And then in this one, we're going to take 1,800 minus 100 over 3, because there's 3 years remaining, and that gives us 720, because we're going to use the bigger of the two, between 720 and 567. So that gives us a book value of 1,800 minus 720 of 1,080. Bring that down to the next year, do this calculation again, and in this case, we're just going to take the remaining balance, and we're going to we take the straight line calculation. In this case, the straight line is bigger, so we're going to choose then 490 for that calculation because it's bigger than 432. And then we're going to, that means that the remaining book value is 590. And then we go ahead and bring that down, and we do the straight line calculation and the double declining balance calculation, and then we again choose the higher value, and that brings us down to the book value at the end of the time, which is of 100, which is equal to the salvage value. So we've gone through this calculation and got a complete schedule for depreciation for the 5-year period using double declining balance switching to straight line. I'm going to look at another example here. So in this case, we have a machine that was purchased for $10,000, and it has a 5-year life with an estimated salvage value of $2,000. Use double declining balance method switching to straight line to develop a depreciation schedule. So we're going to go ahead and do this calculation. Again, we're using alpha of 0.4, which is 2 over n, and it's still a 5-year life. I have the same table set up. In this case, I have a $10,000 initial value. We take 0.4 times 10,000 to get the double declining balance value. And then to get this one, we take the initial investment of 10,000 minus the salvage value of 2,000 divided by 5 is 1,600. We choose the larger value, and then we calculate the book value after we know the depreciation. Bring that value down, do the calculation again. In this case, we take the 6,000 times 0.4. And for this calculation, we're going to take the remaining book value of 6,000 minus the salvage value over 4 years, because we only have 4 years left. Choose the bigger one, and that gives us a 3,600 book value. Again, we choose this again, 1440, and the 533 is again 3,600 minus 2,000 divided by 3, because we have 3 years left. So we're going to choose the bigger depreciation, and that brings us a salvage value of 2,160. Bring that down here. And what happens in this one is that we can't actually have the 2,160 times 0.4, because that's 864. And the depreciation can't be more than 160, because in double declining balance, we can't depreciate beyond the salvage value. We just stop depreciating. And the salvage value is 2,000, so we're going to limit the depreciation to 160. For straight line, we're going to use the same limit here. Well, it's going to be the same kind of limit, 2,160 minus 2,000 over 2, which is 80. So again, we're going to choose the larger one that brings the salvage value down to 0. And then for the last year, because we're already at salvage value, the depreciation is all going to be 0. This value should say 2,000, because that's just a typo on my part. That should be 2,000. So I hope those two examples helped you see about how to calculate double declining balance switching to straight line. Oh, in this case, we have this depreciation schedule defined. So I forgot to tell you about depreciable basis, and this has to do with how much can you depreciate of an asset. So the depreciable amount of an asset is equal to all the costs incurred to put that asset into service, which includes the cost of the equipment plus shipping and handling and installation cost, and that's known as the depreciable basis. So here's an example. What is the depreciation in year 3 for a newly installed CNC machine? The cost of the equipment is $250,000. The shipping and handling was 10% of the total cost. It was necessary to make improvements to the facility to accommodate the electrical needs of the equipment, which costs $50,000. The ongoing maintenance of the machine is $10,000 a year. Use straight-line depreciation and a 20-year life. The salvage value is 0. So let's look at these costs. The first is the initial cost of $250,000. Now that's the cost of the equipment. That's definitely something that we want to be depreciating. And then the 10% of the shipping and handling, we also need to include that in the depreciable basis, because it was part of the cost of getting the equipment there. So in this case, it's $25,000. In addition, the kinds of changes we had to make in the facility to accommodate the new equipment added $50,000 to the depreciable basis. But this ongoing maintenance is not part of the depreciable basis. That is an ongoing expense that's going to be reoccurring. It's not included in the depreciation. So we're going to use straight-line depreciation in a 20-year life. So the depreciable basis is $325,000, which is the addition of all of these initial costs. And we're just going to do it straight line. There's 0 salvage value, so that means the depreciation is going to be $16,250 in each year of the 3-year life. So in this video, we covered example calculations of double declining balance switching to straight line in 2 different examples, and then I also talked about the concept of depreciable basis.